Hey, I'm Mike. Welcome to the Wandering Minds. Today, my special guest is Rick. Rick, tell me about you. Tell me about who you are. What made you the person you are today? From any age you want to start with, and you're comfortable with sharing, share it.
All right. Hi, I'm Rick. I'm Mike's brother. This is a first, so I wanted to start when I was a kid, because that kind of sets the pace for everything. It's something that I look back to a lot, trying to kind of just figure things out, especially early on. Once things got, pretty bad as far as like the drugs and just life being an absolute shambles. It all goes back when you're young and when you're a kid and just kind of taking certain steps and going down a certain road. And then everything else kind of follows.
Like a trajectory.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that,
where did that start for you?
Well, I think honestly it started with mom and dad getting divorced and splitting up.
What age was that?
Oh, gosh, that was...
You were 5 maybe?
Yeah, 5, 6,
okay.
Right around there. Bob came into the picture probably 6 or 7 years old,
okay.
So we were pretty young, and I remember...
I feel like I remember Bob being abusive.
He was abusive.
Mm-hmm.
He was more abusive to mom, which I never knew about until years later when, we'd have conversations just about, life, and things like that. Because there's a lot of stuff that mom, never knew about, me, because I was always, running away and things like that. And so, but there was a time when we started talking about things, opening up a little bit, and probably said a lot, too much, because it's your mom and everything. But we all have our lives,
Well, and that being said, mom was a young mom.
Yeah.
Mom was a young mom. She had you at 15 or 16?
16.
Okay.
Her and dad were married at 15, right?
Yeah. So she was young and yeah. Okay. So
they were young and mom had us.
Yep.
And then and being young, she, I felt as a mother, she was the one that was stuck with us. Not stuck with us, but she was our mom,
Yep.
And so dad, he was, I think he was more wild, and just, he just, whatever it was that made them split up or whatever, it just happened. But the issue I think with me is that, being the oldest and having more memories is I absolutely idolized my dad. Now I remember when he would come over and visit sometimes, and a lot of letdown too, because he was, the expectation was he would visit and all this other stuff, and then he wouldn't, and so I remember just a lot of letdown and things like that. But when he visited, he was always fun. I mean, he was just dad, he was fun. He was, but I think me and you, even though you were so young, were impacted outwardly the most. I'm sure that the girls, or Judy was too, because she was a little older than you, but she maybe dealt with it a little differently. But man, I would go off and I would hide and I would just cry and I would cry, and you'd throw fits too and cry as well, and so, these things affected us, and this is not saying anything about mom or dad as people, I love my mom. I have utmost respect for my mother. My dad, I love my dad. But again, he was the guy that took off and had another life, and so families suffer. They always suffer when you got divorces. I don't care.
Yeah.
The kids can go through school and be perfect and all this other stuff, but it affects the family and it affects kids.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why you got a mom and a dad.
Yeah.
But so I idolized my dad an awful lot, and I had this image of my dad, growing up when we were young. So anyways, mom, gets with Bob. He was abusive. He was more abusive to her, kind of out of sight of us. But I remember being afraid of him all the time, and when I would get in trouble, I would have to go pick switches, which is what happened with kids back then, off the tree. And if I got one that was too small.
Yeah, I remember that. You're 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
5 years older than me, almost exactly. And I remember that shit. The trauma is fucking etched in my brain.
Yeah.
So go ahead. And
he was a pretty hard man. He was, I don't know a lot about him, but I think that, when he was pretty young, he comes from a small town in Washington, and he ended up in Walla Walla when he was, I think when he was around 18 years old.
Walla Walla State
Penitentiary.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, is, he got a certain sentence back then, and he ended up doing longer than what his sentence was. And so Walla Walla back in those days was pretty crazy, just one of the hard penitentiaries and stuff. Well, anyways, that being said, he was a hard individual, but but I remember being afraid of him. I remember, but they would make us do chores, And the thing about Mom and even Bob is, I think that on certain levels he tried. I think he really he wanted to do good. He tried. We moved around a lot, and so I think this is kind of key as well, as far as me goes. Is I remember, and I guess a lot of it had to do with him just trying to find jobs. And so we ended up in Colorado and Montana and and the Dakotas and everything, change of schools. So constantly. Yeah, we go to a school and don't finish out the year. You just start making friends, and then you're leaving, and I think that had a really big impact on me, because after a while, another thing is, I loved horror movies, and I got turned on to Kiss. Man, I was pretty young. Yeah. Pretty young.
I remember the 8-track.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, so Kiss, horror movies, the whole ghost thing, love martial arts.
So darker stuff, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And this kind of set the pace for being more accepting when I became a teenager for getting involved in certain things. It had its start in this. Yeah. And it was that whole fantasy thing. Kiss was these, they were just, bigger than life. They were, they were the horror movie, but they were cool, and they were music. And so I was a big fan of them for I don't know, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, something like that. And so I remember getting, I don't want to bounce around too much, but okay. Let me get back a little bit. So we would move around a whole lot. And I remember, man, I just wasn't doing very good in school. Wasn't really, like I said, when it come to friends and stuff, you meet people and then you're gone. I remember, I don't know where, if it was Montana or something, where I'm literally in class, and then they pulled me out of class, to go home because we were moving, and so the root things, being established, being someplace, building up, friendships and relationships, feeling as if you're someplace. I remember getting picked on a lot when I was, a kid, and this is, not preschool,
grade school, yeah.
Man, I got picked on a lot, and so I don't know what it was about me that always had these bullies coming at me. Yeah. Now, I will say that the times that I stood up to the bully, I usually got the better end. Yeah. Just because that just seems to be the case with bullies. They bully people that they think are weaker than them, and then, when those people stand up, they're, the fight is just the fight.
Because they're all bark and no bite.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so I kind of got, lucky there. But I remember getting bullied a lot. I remember, bouncing around, not really, feeling I had any kind of roots or anything like that. And then getting turned on to like Kiss and the movies, and then of course Dad being out of the picture. And so I liked knives. I started skipping school, wandering around. This is what kind of got me in trouble, where I ended up ultimately, being turned over to be awarded the court, because I started to act out in regard to nothing bad. I wasn't doing anything bad, but
skipping school.
But I was skipping school,
like that,
and I would just take off and wander around and and things like that. I ran away a couple times. So going back a bit, Mom separated from Bob, and we were in College Place or Walla Walla, and you and Kara, or was it you and Judy, were staying with Big Judy? I think
probably Eddie, Kara and I.
Right.
Kara and I used to do that all the time.
Right. But I don't think it was Judy that was with me. I almost want to say that it was Kara that was with me when on 2 occasions, this is when Mom had separated from Bob, we had to flee. And so so she was scared to death of him. Like I said, I didn't know all the details until years later, where he was very abusive. But we had to take off and go to a women's shelter. And so, and I'm probably 10 at this time, and it was right around or before we got Rocky, I want to say, our dog, our first pit. But it was I remember where it was at. We were in that big field in College Place or Walla Walla. And so we took off running through the field.
He got stuck, right? Did he get stuck under a fence?
He did. Yeah, he almost died. And one of the guys that...
See, I remember that shit.
Oh,
and I was probably...
Horrible.
I had to have been 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So how old were you at that time, do you think?
I was like maybe 10.
Okay, so I was 5.
Yeah.
I was 5, and I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Like, vividly, I remember that shit.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, go.
No, so on 2 occasions we had to flee, and Mom would meet somebody, another female at these women's shelters, and then and I think I want to say twice, 2 times they came back and they moved in with us, and they kind of helped watch us and stuff because Mom was always working. She had to work. Now we always had somebody watching us, until maybe a little bit, older. We got a little bit bigger or whatever, but most we had somebody watching us and things like that. But I remember, and this kind of revolves around this. We weren't, horror movies started coming out. There were like Friday the 13th, those types of movies. MTV started to come out at some point. Anyways, this all kind of factors in because I remember, really being interested in the horror movies and the really, really horror movies. But Mom, we
like
had
the slasher movies.
Exactly.
Like Michael, Halloween, and Friday the 13th.
All that, but Mom would make us go to bed at a certain time, and we had to do chores and we had to do all that, and we weren't really supposed to watch certain things. But I remember when she's gone because she's doing her nighttime job.
Yep.
And somebody else would be there, a babysitter. We're always trying to get away with stuff and watch things that we're not supposed to watch and all that, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think all this kind of was leading into that kind of more wild streak for me, and we ended up in these women's shelters. And I remember, always being real close with Mom. Mom was always really wanted to be hands-on, and she'd give each of us time. And, she talked to me about all kinds of stuff, and I remember some of the first conversations we had, and this is before I started running away and doing that, but it was right up around those times, talking about sex, and how important it was to really love the person you're with and all that. Now that's always stuck out with me.
Yeah.
But I always felt like I can talk to Mom about, anything, just I can talk to her, and, because she understood, and she's a young mom. She was a worldly person.
She was in touch. She was an in touch mom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so one of the times we were at one of those women's shelters, again, man, horror movies and staying up and and stuff like that. Mom was allowing a little bit, because of the situation and whatnot. But I remember seeing this Born to Be Wild back patch. It was in Bremerton. And I just related with that so much, and I just had this image, these early breakdancing movies started to come out. Yeah. This is, so
this is 80s, right?
This is 80s. This is early 80s, right? Yeah. And this is going into when what led up to being awarded the court. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead because it was a time with Dad, and it was after that I became awarded the court. But all this stuff, I remember watching, watching these breakdancing movies and these gang movies that were early on gang movies, and just being, that was this fantasy that was building up in my head about stuff.
Yep.
And like I said, when it came to Dad, while there was a lot of disappointment, I idolized my dad. And so I had this picture of him as this certain type of a person, and I looked up to him and I wanted to be like him and everything. And so, and part of it was this wild kind of side, right? And, I knew he was a biker at the time and everything. And, let me try to think here.
Prior to Ward of the Court.
Prior to Ward of the Court. Now, we had moved to Portland with Luria and our cousins before coming to Seaside. Yeah. And so when we were there, I remember a babysitter, friend of Luria's, but she was a babysitter, giving me a whole bunch of Kiss 8-tracks. And I had this 8-track player that I would just play constantly. Now, for some reason, and again, I think it factors into the movies, the whole horror thing, Kiss, just all that. And plus, years later, doing a little bit more studying on the impact that music does have on you, especially a young person. It's huge.
Subliminal.
Absolutely. In every possible way. And so I'm listening to this stuff all the time, constantly. And I start kind of getting into this because, like I said, for me, the horror movies, the image, the fantasy that came with TV, the looking up to somebody that wasn't there and trying to follow something,
to build him into something,
and to have an identity. I was craving that. And so that wasn't established with a healthy home relationship no matter what mom tried, because the person that I looked up to the most, which was the male, wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so everything else that was out there that I was attracted to was the things that I was looking more up to. Now I started some, I don't want to say the occult, but I started, having that fantasy of the dark stuff, the darker side of things. And and I know, I want to say that it started in Portland, but I know that it started, our aunts, they were into the freaking whole
witchcraft and
all
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't,
Yeah.
Again, it was all cool because they were cool people.
Yeah.
But they were like these cool witches sort of,
Yeah.
on the image that I had. But
Well, they fit that.
They fit that to a T. They fit it to a T. And but I don't really know what they were all involved in or anything like that. I don't think it was anything sinister for sure. But there's different levels of everything, right? But
now as referenced, was this puberty range area or
this is
pre-puberty? Pre-puberty. So you're coming.
I'm 10, 11 years old right here.
Okay.
And because I remember going through,
Because I think that should be pointed out because it's especially with boys. I don't know about girls, but with boys. So okay.
No, absolutely. This is all. It's all real important timing and what happens with us and as we're developing and everything else, and developing these ideas about things. So, music and these things, fantasy things, were having an impact on me as to identity and what I was looking after, what I was chasing after. This thing started to develop, and it started to develop a little bit later. But again, I would see these breakdancing movies and the way that they portrayed the streets and people. And it was like, that was really attractive.
Yeah.
That was super attractive and glamorized, really glamorized. And so LA, was a focus of that, right? Warm weather and graffiti and all this stuff, right? And so we were in Portland and we had moved to Seaside. And in Seaside, I think is where I was in 6th grade. Seaside is where things started to, it all had its buildup. I remember, kind of backtracking a little ways. Maybe I was 10 years old or something, running away. Mom had one of the ladies that we had lived with. I think her name was Tina. I can actually still remember that. Come back with us, and we had, lived. This is in Washington. We lived somewhere, and I remember running away because I got in a fight with her, taking off, and wanting to go find Bob. And so that was like my destination point. It was just getting away, and I remember having a little knife. And thinking, okay, I got this little knife and I'm this little kid, but I still had this image of myself being able to take on a full-grown man. Yeah. And if it happened, if I got snagged up or whatever, because you're always thinking about that, stuff. And I remember walking in the town that it was. It's some little rinky-dink town. It was probably outside of Walla Walla somewhere, because that's kind of where a hub that we ended up bouncing back because of Joyce and Ed and Eddie and them. And I remember walking, and here comes this cop walking around the corner. And he knew who I was. He was looking for me and took me home. I'm this little kid, didn't do anything, but I ran off. And that started things, I think, as far as my running away thing.
Now, did you get a rush out of that? Is that why it started something, or what was it?
I think I did. Absolutely got a rush. Man, I'm walking down.
Because now you're kind of an outlaw.
Absolutely.
Not that you were, but the kind of just this
I wanted
idea.
to be.
Yeah.
I wanted to be. I was attracted to that. I gravitated towards the image of that I had. The image I had of my dad, that is what attracted me. And then so it started to develop. And I remember around this time, we got to Seaside, and again, man, having a lot of problems. And this is before I went. I think this is before I went with Dad. It might not be. It might actually been afterwards. But we ended up in Astoria, and I might get a little bit of this jumbled. But we were over there with Lurie and them. Had Rocky.
No, I was in a body cast in Astoria.
Yeah.
So I
you
got
were.
hit
I
by a
remember
car
that.
in Seaside. Yeah.
But did that happen when before I went with Dad, or before I went to the group homes?
I'm not sure.
Because I can't remember that either.
I feel like it was very close to the same time.
Yeah.
It was very close to the same time. I got hit by a car in Seaside. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, somebody poisoned Rocky.
Yeah.
Right?
So that was after my dad then.
Yeah.
Because I had Rocky with Dad.
Yep.
So, that was horrible. Rocky was, I think that like with people and things come into your life at certain times that are, that are just real pivotal. And for me with Rocky, just the whole, found him at a Shell gas station.
Yep.
You know, the guy there was like, you know, I saw this little puppy. I'm a kid. I would, you know, attracted want to go up to a puppy. And he fit this image of this tough dog,
Yeah.
you know, which is why we named him Rocky.
Yep.
And he was just the cutest little cropped ear little pit bull dog. And the station guy, or the guy at the station, had said that he doesn't know who it is. It's a cute dog. And I says, oh, I know who it is. And I took him home. And he was ours, man. And then, of course, he got caught under the fence and almost died and everything. That was horrible, you know. But again, you know, intervening forces, you know, hearing them and going out there, and we were able to find somebody that was able to help and all that. But Rocky, so I was having, you know, just having family problems. You know, Mom had her hands full, and you know, and having issues, having problems. I'll kind of maybe get back to a little specifically, but I was starting to be in contact with my dad. So my mom got in contact with Dad, you know, to see if I can go live with him. And I did. I really wanted to live with him, and just because he was my dad, you know. And so he said, I remember he was gonna come down on his bike and to be ready. And I had my flannel shirt with my
leather jacket.
Well, no, I didn't have a leather jacket, but it would be the flannel. You kind of roll up and you let the white
Levi jean jacket, right?
Well, no, you have it underneath your
the fur.
No, you wear it under your clothes.
Oh, yeah, long johns.
Long johns.
Yeah.
And I'd have it rolled up because, again, you know, I'd see my dad, you know, like this and everything, and I was ready, and I was, you know, all packed up, and he didn't come on his bike, so we were, you know, and so, you know, it's just again, it was just a disappointment thing where, you know, and this kind of it didn't set the pace because it was kind of already there, but it was more of the same, you know, almost. And I love my dad, so I'm not saying anything. My dad is just, he's our dad, you know. And but we go to Seattle and get enrolled in school. I'm in 6th grade. Carol's pregnant with Antoinette.
Yeah, Carol is his wife at the time. Yep.
Yes, and she had a daughter named Faith from previous marriage, you know, and she was older. And well, anyway, so I go with them, get in school, and honestly, now there were some things that happened that were pretty important, but I remember, you know, again, I was having problems, but my dad did make me, and I was literally grounded, it seemed like half the year, to my room. But because I was getting pink slips started coming out. I was having, you know, some issues. I was getting in a couple fights. One of them was with the bully. One was with the guy that beat me up and robbed me later on. And anyways, but I was there. I was in Seattle, and I remember, you know, Carol would make me these lunches. I didn't have a lunch pail. I'd have a sandwich bag. Of course, they were feeding kids there. And sometimes my jeans, man, I had holes in my jeans. And kids are mean. Yeah. You know, kids are mean. And so, you know, and I would get messed with and you know, and stuff like that and everything, and just kind of typical kid stuff, you know. But I was on the receiving end of a lot of that. And there was this one kid that would just mess with me all the time. And I remember finally, you know, out, you know, in our classes or whatever, out in the locker area, man, I kicked him in the gut and I pushed him down, and it wasn't like a full-on fight. But what I did was enough. I think that was all. Maybe I did hit him a couple times. Maybe I kicked another dude in the gut. It was a bully. Anyways, it was like these guys just fall over, you know, and he just shut his mouth. I never had any problem with that dude after that. But I was getting in some problems, and my grades weren't the best, and I did a complete, by the time school did end, you know, and I was there long enough to get through the school year and into summer, I passed, and they said I did like a 180, and it was because Dad had made me and grounded me and made me do my homework, and he would go over my homework. Yeah. Now, so there's some things with my dad. He was running around with, you know, his crowd, and there would be days, especially when Carol was pregnant, you know, and afterwards, where he wouldn't be there for days. We would have no food. And I remember going out in the yard and Carol talking about how you can eat dandelion leaves and stuff like that, and going out there and picking them. Had no food for Rocky. Wow. And you know, and so I mean, this happened on several, you know, occasions, and you know, he's off doing his thing with his people, you know, and that all was more important than, you know, again, than
family
being where he needed to be.
Yeah.
And that is where these lifestyles take people. They take people away from the things that are the most important. Yeah. And they might be exciting, and they are exciting, but it undermines everything that is the most important, you know, and that affects everybody that you're in contact with.
Big snowball effect.
And So I remember, during this time, I had some good friends that I'd run around with and everything, and luckily, and I had Rocky. He was there. My dog was there. So, well, anyways, I remember Dad coming in one day when I was grounded, and him saying, I love you because you're my son, but I don't like you as a person. And here I am, 11. I turned 12 there, 12-year-old kid, where the person that you idolize is telling you that he doesn't like you as a person. Yeah. I'm a freaking kid. I'm getting in trouble for whatever, but, and so, and that was pretty crushing. I remember just, not having the connection with them that I wanted. I didn't have any kind of a connection with Carol because she was not my mom. You know what I mean? And I think she tried, she wasn't bad toward, us, but we weren't her kids. We were from a previous family. Rick was her husband. They had their family, and I get it, know, but not anything about Carol whatsoever as far as like any bad coming towards us. There was never that connection. Antoinette was born. She's just the cutest little girl, and but I remember writing a letter on a couple of occasions talking about how I was going to hang myself. I wanted to kill myself. I left him out so that my dad would find him, literally, And he found, I think he found one, and he questioned me on it, but it was more like, what the hell is this sort of thing? There was nothing like, man, what's going on? Yeah. Are you okay? What is going on? Which is what I needed. It was none of that. And so finally I called Mom, and okay, there is this one thing that I think is really important. Before we moved over to the place that we ended up moving over and where Antoinette was born, the house Antoinette was born in, I skipped school. And I went, because that's what I did, right? And I went wandering around, and I made my way to downtown, Seattle. And this is up in the where Wachelli graveyard is. Mm-hmm. It's way down Aurora, and I mean, so Seattle is, you can see downtown, but it's quite a walk. Yeah. And I huffed it, and I got to the Seattle Center, and I'm walking around, and I'm checking things out. And I'm 11 at the time. I didn't even turn 12 yet. And so this dude approached me, and he started talking to me, and he's like, "You want to go up there?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and he took me up there, and then he asked me, where I lived and blah blah blah, if I needed a ride or whatever, and so I start, I get in the car with him, and then
wait, how old are you at this time?
11.
11, 12. How old is this guy?
He's a full grown man.
Okay.
He's a full grown man.
Okay, so you get in the car.
Yeah, and so he started messing with me, and didn't like
molesting you.
Yeah, okay. Playing with my pee-pee.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying something, and I was letting him. I was scared, and I was.
So it was a flight, fight, or freeze, and you froze.
Kind of sort of thing. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Now he asked me if he can go down on me and everything, and I'm like, all the images that I had in my head that you're instilled with when you're a kid, when you run away, is that there's these people out there that will kill you. Yeah. And I'm thinking, man, this dude's going to bite my thing off if I let him do that. I didn't want to do this at all. Yeah. And but he had his hands on me and had something over, so it was covering it. I think I remember being behind like a school bus or whatever, and just being mortified, just embarrassed that somebody was going to see. Yeah. And things were uncertain and everything. And so he did take me, dropped me off at the school, and then he gave me $5. And I think this impacts directions that I took when I started running away. Yeah. But I never told Dad about it. He never knew about that, and not anything I would talk about or whatever. And so, anyways, things weren't good with my dad. Like I said, he's in and out. And when he would be there, and he was there, he was on. Pretty much, I wasn't getting what I needed as a son. I was really starting to have some issues. I had Rocky to lean on. I mean, he was my companion. And then I finally wrote Mom. I'm like, please come and get me. And then I didn't tell my dad. And I remember he was making chili that day, and Mom shows up, and he was surprised, and and all that. And I went back with Mom. Yeah. And then so, but there'd been enough at this point where something needed to be done for me, because I was just where I was at, and and Mom, of course, was doing everything she could. Well, you got hit, and I remember when you got hit, and I remember us moving. It was in Seaside where that park was, and then Rocky got poisoned. Didn't know he got poisoned at the time. He got sick, and we took him to the vet, and the worst of worst is we called the vet the next day, and they're like, your dog died. Yeah. And so I've always been torn up about him dying in this strange place, you know, away from his home. And so we had him. It was obviously really tough. We buried him in our front yard. And we went to, oh, wait, did we go to Astoria? No, we were in Portland. Astoria is where we were when Dad came and got me.
Yeah.
And then you guys moved back to Seaside. You got hit by a car. Oh, okay. So here's something that's real pivotal as well. And this has always torn me up also.
Yeah.
So I'm going through stuff, man, and I'm running off, and Mom's chasing me, and I'm just taking off. And I remember having her. We were with Lurie at the time though, because I remember our uncle being there, and Luria's stepdad there, whatever she was married to. Anyways, I think, and this might be a little jumbled right here, but it was still all in this era. But I'm pretty sure it was after I came back. And I remember being in the window and praying to Satan and all this stuff and just because it was, again, it's this childish image of things and all this. And but I remember taking off. I remember coming back or whatever and having Mom in the bathroom up against a wall. I wasn't physically pushing her there, but telling her I was going to kill her and all this other stuff, right? And then I was torn up at the time, but I was just screwed up. You know what I'm saying? I was a kid. I was acting out and everything, and I never did that again. But I mean, but so there was a lot of things that were going on. She had her hands full, and I was probably started 7th grade at this time, flunked every class, half a year maybe, and then I talked to a caseworker that Mom was in contact with, and she talked about St. Mary's School for Boys. And the way she made it sound was like, here's this big group home. It's like a camp. It's going to be fun and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, I won't be home. And like, home was this terrible place. It wasn't. But, and so I agreed to it, and from Mom's angle, it's she didn't know what to do. And I get it. There was you, there was.
And me at that time was probably in a body cast.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so, I was acting out. I mean, there was nothing. I remember running away on several occasions, and just wanting to huff it, wanting to huff it. Okay, so they put me in an evaluation center in Portland. It was outside of Portland, and the evaluation center was just what they were going to do. They were going to evaluate you, do all these retarded tests and everything, and they'd place you, and they'd finally get you. The goal was to finally get me into St. Mary's, right? And so I got kicked out of there because I was smoking weed, pierced my ear. I was around all the other kids that were just like me. They had problems, and so you put all those kids together. The staff are great, but you're dealing with troubled kids that are now the focus is the kids. Yeah. The kids are their group, and. So I pierced my ear and started smoking pot. And I think one time I smoked pot with a kid playing in Seaside, playing hooky from school, got caught by the cops. And then we got drunk one time on Mom's liquor when we broke into Mom's liquor when she was working and had some friends over. And that's the extent of the drugs. But I did experiment and play around for a couple years with smoking, because Mom had a friend, he would roll your own.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. So we get, little weeds and stuff and roll them. Because it's all adult stuff. It's all cool stuff. The cool people are all doing this, But I got to the group home, and then I got kicked out of there because I got kicked out of school. You have to go to school. And so they sent me to one in Eugene. And then, so I went to the one in Eugene, and then from there, that's when I started running away. And I ran away with a kid that was already been to McLaren, already been in the system. And at this time also, I had this fantasy of getting to LA, and this was in my head for a number of years. Now, I finally got there, but I was much older, much wiser, and it was, different. Yeah. But I wasn't a 13-year-old kid ending up in freaking Los Angeles where I probably would have disappeared. There's no doubt about it. It was bad enough in, places I was at. But, so we have to hit the railroad tracks, did acid, because Eugene at that time had a mall that was downtown that was an outside mall, and hung out there for a couple days and, stole a little belt, little rocker belt, traded it for some acid, tripped crazy trip. Got, hit the railroad tracks because we'd heard that if you can, you can get on a train and it'll get you where you want to go and all that stuff, all these stories you hear. And, well, we had gotten caught, right? Miles down the road or whatever, we ended up getting caught and, got drugged back to a group home. And then, so at this time it was, they took me home till they can put me back into a group home. And it was this rotating door for a while. I ended up in Portland, and this is before I got to St. Mary's. And so I went to the group home in Portland, I believe. Now, I don't remember the order of some of these, but the one in Portland is still when I was because I was 12 and I turned 13 in the evaluation center. Mm-hmm. So I turned 13 in the group home. And so this is all in, 1984-ish when I was 13. And so I ended up in the one in Portland and then ran away. I think I ran away a couple times to downtown Portland. Now, because we were outside, we were in Portland, right? So I just went downtown and all this other stuff. So this is where things started to get where I got introduced to hustling as a kid, mm-hmm. and because there's nothing else you're going to do when you're that young. I wasn't strong or big enough to be beating people up and robbing them and doing all the street life stuff that goes along with that. So you hustle, and guys do it too, but I think that I got approached, dyeing my hair black, and he was, dude that was gay guy, and and stuff, and so there was this started that going down that road, mm-hmm. and I want to say. I don't know how many group homes I was in, but at that particular group home, I ended up, went to the Boys and Girls Aid Society, but I ran away from that. I was there twice until they finally, they kicked, it was done. But I think the last time was when, and this is where Mom and Dad had to find me. I ran into a dude, started talking to him, and he worked at the City nightclub, which was just one of those nightclubs, in the city, but it was the one that was like the alternative type one. Okay. The drugs are out in the open. People are going there prostituting, hustling, along with everything else that goes along with those types of things. Right. Yep. And so I had a fake ID that was made. I knew the owners. One of them took, pictures with the other, it was all that. Right. And so the dude that I was with, or ended up staying with for, I don't know how long it was, maybe a month, maybe a couple months, had worked there. And so I was able to go there through that. And so I would, do the hustle thing there, and he would set me up with some people and stuff like that. And finally, a couple months, cops are looking for me. A couple months later, but I started doing MDA and acid, mm-hmm. And of course smoking pot every day. Yeah. Now, this is going to be a little bit gross, but the first time that I ejaculated, I was hustling, right? Okay. Never came before, didn't even know what it felt like. Felt like I was peeing. And, it was just, but, so that was my experience with that. But, so I was doing stuff before that because, again, that door had been opened. Yeah. And I'm not gay. I mean, I'm just not gay. I'm just stating that up very,
you're doing what you had to do.
But it was this thing where it was like, got me off the street, got me food, got me attention, it was super easy. Yeah. Especially if you're a kid, it is easy. Yeah. So we were up at this place and an apartment, and I remember, man, knocking on the door, and I remember I think my dad busted through the door. He was with the counselor at one of the last group home that I was with, mm-hmm. and they found me, and I remember being in bed with this dude, and I had a boner and mm-hmm. fucking gross shit, man. Sorry, but
no, that's
but
life,
that was that situation, right?
That's where you were at that time.
Yeah, and but so that was again that was pretty pivotal.
I fuck up words all the time.
Yeah,
pivotal.
But and so there was a lot of that, and I went home, and of course I'm in the running mode. I ran off, and so again I was still awarded the court. They finally dropped it. I finally got over to St. Mary's, okay, but by that time I'd been running away. I ran away from every single place they put me into. They would take me home, or I would go home, and they'd take me from there and do another group home because and of course my mom was always there. Yeah. This obviously was backfiring from what she wanted. Yeah. But I was always able to call her, and if I was in trouble or whatever, I mean, she'd be, and she was always there. Yes. But but anyway, so 13, it's mainly Portland. It's running away. It's being involved in this type of stuff. And there was a right around what it was in this time, because it was when I was 13, was the first time I shot up. I ran away from a group home, and it was right around all this time. I just don't remember exactly, because the one group home where I ran away from, where I was with one dude, where my dad and the counselor got me, it was still around this time. And I don't know if that was the group home that I'd ran away with from, because it was on, it's a main street in Portland, and straight down, it's straight downtown.
Yeah, goes all the way through.
Right. And so I ran away. I was running around with another kid. He got busted ripping off some stuff. I got away with it, I think. And so we got split up, and he's just another street kid, and so anyways, I remember having this jacket, had all those Michael Jackson type jacket, because that was what was cool,
zippers,
and it was the zippers and the parachute pants and everything else.
Yeah.
And so at this time, I'm still figuring things out for myself, right? So I was still really, turned on and attracted to that sort of thing. I liked the breakdancing thing and all this, and so I was trying to kind of find my place.
Street life.
All that.
Yeah.
And so going along with this story, one of the things that kind of to show my mentality is I wanted to belong and fit in and be a part of something, because I didn't feel that I had any identity of my own. And so, when it came to drugs, when it came to all this stuff, man, I was ready to jump right in. And plus the image that I had of like streets and everything else, I wanted to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, I ran away from a group home. I had this jacket that I'd stolen from one of the malls down there. And so I traded it for a couple hits of what I thought was Valium to this group of black kids, right? Mm-hmm. And didn't know what it was, didn't know what Valium was, but again,
You didn't care.
I didn't care. I was trying to be involved in all this other stuff and appear, like I knew what I was doing and cool and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, a day or so later, I ran into these same guys downtown. Now, downtown Portland at that time, they had a place called The Wall, and and all this stuff where all the people would hang out. And of course, they had the Pioneer Square down there. But it was like Seattle. It was more dirty. It was a little bit more
ghetto.
Yeah, to say the least. They cleaned up Seattle quite a lot. But when I started running around down there, it was different. Yeah. Downtown was downtown. And I don't know what it is not right now, because it's been long decades since I've been there. But I know that they had cleaned it up quite a bit from when I was like there in like '86 and stuff. But so I got approached from these guys the next day or so, and they surrounded me and they're like, "Where's my money?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, you owe us money for that Valium. And I'm like, "No, I don't." It was one of those sorts of things. Yeah. So these guys had me surrounded, because there was like 5 or 6 of them. They were all around my age, maybe a little. They're all teenagers, around my age, a little older, whatever. And I remember being really, really scared. But I also remember just, not being able to back down. Yeah. Right. Fortunate for me, a black dude walks down, and he was a bum or whatever, and he tells these guys that there was a cop down the street. They were walking up doing the beat, and so these guys scatter. The black guy takes me up to what was the Greyhound downtown at that particular time. It had been changed into a dance club after that, but then it was a Greyhound, and he told me to go home, and so and I'm sitting there in the Greyhound, just like, fuck, man, because the reality.
So that was an angel in the moment.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, 100%, because these guys would have beat me up. I'm pretty damn sure, because that's what they did back then. Yeah. Different roaming groups of people and stuff like that. And I heard that these guys, shortly after that happened, to jump this other dude anyways. Yeah. This was very, very common back then. And so I'm at the Greyhound, and I'm just like, the reality of what just happened kind of was starting to hit me, and I was out of place. I'm very out of place, and it's not glamorous, it's not all this fun shit, and everything else.
It's the fucking streets.
It's the streets, and so I started to get more, like I said, I'd already been doing some other things, and so now things are starting to, this happened, and so another guy comes up, and he's like, "Hey, what happened?" Start talking to me. And I told him, man, what happened? He says, "Oh, don't worry." He says, you do drugs or you do crank or whatever? I didn't know what crank was, And he showed me his gun that he had underneath his, his shirt or whatever. Yeah. He says, let's take off. Nobody's going to mess with you. And I'm like, all right. And I just want to get out of there. And so we took off, went to a motel, his motel, and you know, and before he gave me any crank or did anything, he had a blindfold on and started to, you know, go down on me, right?
Damn.
And he's like, let me, you know, after a while, he's like, let me know when you come. I never came. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And I remember putting spittle on my freaking thing and saying I did it.
Oh shit!
I swear to God, I'm not making this up.
Yeah, no, I believe you.
And so I can just imagine what this guy's thinking.
Yeah.
He knew I was young, but maybe the reality of like how young I actually was.
Yeah.
You know, like he gave a shit. But anyways, it was that thing. Well, okay, so afterwards, he started making up some crank, right? And I was asking him how he did it and everything, and he was kind of talking about it because he was shooting me up. And he, you know, shouted up, put him arm, whatever, and then the rush hit me, and I remember, you know, it was just didn't know what to expect. It hits you, it hits the lungs, you get that, you know, that cough, and then I remember he had said when he was mixing it up that he had used some kind of solution. Okay. And then the reality as I'm rushing was this guy's going to kill me, you know, and I says, you know, and I was thinking. Focused on what he said about the solution. I says, you mean this stuff's going to put me to sleep? Because in my mind, this guy's going to kill me. Yeah. And he started laughing. He's like, no, you're going to be up for a long time. Well, he ends up getting a phone call. So there was no more sex or anything at that point. But I remember the rush hit me and it felt good. Yeah. That was it for speed with me. I mean, I was one of those guys that did instantly. And I loved it. And I remember just talking. I remember being super freaking horny. Yeah. And talking and everything, and then he had gotten a phone call from somebody probably to go do a deal or whatever, and then, you know, so yeah, he got a taxi for me and you know, and sent me, you know, maybe gave me a couple bucks and sent me packing, you know, and I went downtown and I just was jabbering off everybody's ear that was down there that would listen. But so obviously there's more stories and things like that. These are some pretty important ones, I think, because they kind of they were defining things, I guess, of sorts. Introductory, you know, with the speed, the shooting up. I finally got went to St. Mary's, but by that time I was in the running mode, you know, and I'd done some stuff, you know, before I got there when I was running away, you know, with this other kid especially, that and I stole mom's checks, and so I stole mom's checks. Cashed them, super stupid, because I wrote my name and I put John, you know, my buddy John in Seaside's name on there to cash them, and we cashed several $100s worth of checks. Yeah. And then got on the bus, and again, this is another, you know, intervention that happened that kept me from, you know, getting to a destination that I wanted to get to. You know, we're on the bus and we had hundreds of dollars, and we were on the bus to LA. And then they caught us in like Cottage Grove, literally. Really? You know, they stopped the bus. Or maybe the bus stopped, I don't know. But I think that they stopped the bus. They went on there and they took us off the bus and they arrested us. And then, so this is what got me to McLaren in '85. And but again, I didn't get to LA. Yeah. You know, I was kept from getting to LA when I was that young. And we were on the bus to go there. Yeah. You know, and so I finally get to St. Mary's. St. Mary's was, it was fine. It was just this big, you know, kind of institutional, you know, like a college-y kind of, at least it appeared to be that way when I was young, you know, big group home. But I was running away. I was not going to stay anywhere. Yeah. You know, in every single place that I was at or put at or whatever, you know, mom would come and get me, or I'd go home. I'd go back to one of these places and I'd run away. Yeah. Every single one. And so I ran away from St. Mary's either once or twice, and then after that, I remember the last time I ran away, we were out there playing ball, and I'd asked to go to the bathroom, and the staff knew what I was doing. He's like, if you take off, just take off. You're not coming back. Yeah. And I left. You know, I left. And but I think once, even though they found, well, anyways, that's getting ahead of the story. So, you know, the whole thing with the one dude, you know, that worked at the City nightclub, Brian, and, you know, that was, you know, for a while, introduced me to a lot of things. I ended up going to McLaren, and
on what charges?
It was burglary and forgery. Okay. So we had, you know, the burglary was when we ran away from the Eugene group home, and we were on the railroad tracks and we did the acid. We just went into some houses for some
And
food.
just
And
stole
that
some
was
shit.
all
Okay.
it was. It was, I, did some of that when I was a teenager, and I left that completely behind. But but that's what sent me up to McLaren.
Yeah.
And so, 1985, I was 14, went to McLaren, and at that particular time, they said, there wasn't a specific sentence, or like you go in there, you get through your levels or whatever, and you can get out. And I remember being there, or being in the pack rat cottage, because they were the guys that were the youngest ones in the institution, because they, shit would happen to them in other cottages and things. Went there, and I remember December 20, 1985, the day before that, so it was 19th or whatever, and I was working real hard, man. I was working so hard to get my stuff together, and I didn't, I knew I was going to get close to be getting out so I could get, paroleable, but I went there and I looked on the roster and it said Shell blue slipping. Blue slipping was, you're going around and you're having all your teachers and everybody sign off on stuff, and you're gone. So the next day I was out of there, and Mom came and got me, and I think she was with, Mike.
Yep.
And they had moved up to Washington at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were out of there. They were at Newburgh before that or whatever. Because I remember Newburgh and stuff, but
Didn't Montesano.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but that was a little bit later.
Okay.
But right, yeah, with Mike and Montesano and everything. So that was where they went.
Yeah.
That was where they went.
Yep.
So I get out of McLaren and I go home for a while, and then you were there.
Mm-hmm.
We were all there and everything, and then I ended up going back with Dad. And I think I don't think I was really doing anything. I think it was just more to work with them and maybe learn. I don't know. I don't remember exactly why, but I went back with him, and then after a while, things start setting in, and boredom and stuff, and I'm I'm doing normal teenage stuff at that time and everything, and I had friends that were around there and stuff, and but started taking off again, and then I would take off, and because I had some other things that had happened I won't go into right now that were around this time and stuff like that as well, because no, it was after McLaren. Yeah. Well, one thing I will say this. So I took off, and I had acquired a gun, a handgun, and I remember it was in Everett because my dad lived in Everett at the time, and so I must have been 15 at the time, because I was home when I turned 15, and I went with Dad, and then started cutting up again and things like that, and he was in Everett, and so I was going to go try to sell this gun, right? And I was going to try to get over to Seattle, because I didn't know Everett. I knew Seattle. Seattle's what I liked, because I'd already spent time in Seattle, But these guys saw me, and it was just kind of this hard, bar, would be considered kind of a hard, type of a bar. And I dropped all this cash out that I had, right? Because I had, change and stuff like that I turned in. I was trying to turn in and get cash for it and everything. Well, anyways, you think that I would have learned my lesson even by that time, but well, anyways, not a long story, but a longer story short, these guys are going to go in there and get me a smaller gun, and because I had a thing with guns. I like guns. I never really had any, never carried it, but since I was a kid, I also wanted to, get a gun, and I had this fantasy of, all this crap and stuff. And well, anyways, they took me around the alley when they finally came out, down the alley, and then one guy grabbed me by the arm, one guy stuck a gun in my gut, and I started fucking crying. Dude, I was so scared. So the one dude's like good cop, bad cop. The one guy's like, I'm going to shoot you, which is, I was crying. The other guy's just give us your shit and everything's going to be cool.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to shoot.
Yeah.
Made me take off my shoes, give him all my money. I didn't have a lot, but I had, like I said, I had some, and then made me run down the street. And I ran, and fuck, man. And I want to say, so I'm going to go back. We don't have to go on too much longer. We can kind of break this up or whatever, but this is really, for me, is everything kind of set the tone for things.
Yeah.
I was running away. I got introduced to drugs. I was hustling. I was in that cycle of just the back and forth. And I was 15. Now I was in Seattle, and I had a buddy of mine. He was a punk rocker and everything, and older guy, and he had introduced me, or I met this dude Okay, so let me backtrack. So in Seattle at that particular time, 1986, you know, I was running around. I was still kind of into my rocker phase. This is before I started getting into the more metal, you know, things like that. When I say metal, I mean like death metal, speed metal, you know, stuff.
Slayer, those things.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so I was introduced to those bands and things like that, but I was still right on that tail end. So I had some friends, and we were all this kind of group of friends running around Seattle, just pretty much causing havoc like young teenagers would, picking fights with people and dining and dashing and stealing and just doing all that shit. Sleeping in squat houses, sometimes
street shit.
Sometimes we'd, you know, somebody would have a motel, you know, and everybody would kind of, you know, crash there or whatever. But there was a place, it was 2nd and Madison, I remember it. And that was a hustling spot, right? Like I said, this is, you know, this is all embarrassing, but it's so far in my past,
it's,
you know, it's you know, but
important.
Right.
It's your story.
But
no judgment.
Yeah. But this is what, you know, people do, man, you know, and so runaways and you know, and you know, back then, you know, especially if you're young, you know, there's only so much you can do, you know, and so, you know, people, you know, and I think unfortunately with a lot of people and probably more specifically girls, you know, they might get introduced to sex in a real bad way. And this is how they use it the rest of their life. And when you're out there doing stuff, then this is just how they get attention and money. They're still doing it right now, and they're not prostituting with some of the crap they got online with, I don't know, some of the sites I've heard about. It's the same. It's the same. You're selling yourself. You're selling your body. You're selling sex. Bottom line. You know, and but back then, you know, all of us, you know, our little crew and everything, we were all doing that. Everybody was fucking hustling, man. And but I remember 2nd Madison going and hanging out and doing this and you know, turning these tricks and doing all this crap and you know, we do drugs and everything, but I wasn't. You know, there was a little run that I did, like important speed run, shooting up with a dude. But that was after McLaren as well, and this is where little things get kind of jumbled. But into the Seattle scene, I was introduced to a person who was a dealer, but he didn't like deal with everybody or, you know, and everything. It was kind of selective type shit. But I don't want to throw too much out there. I'll give details of my situation. But he was. I don't even know how much I should really say, but
don't say names.
Yeah,
but
I
you can
won't say
say
names. But yeah, so he was, you know, he had been in the military. He was an acting priest. You know, doing whatever. You know, I think in the military or whatever. But he was also a very, very corrupt individual. Very corrupt individual. And so, but he was a Satanist, and the whole.
So he was a priest. And a Satanist.
Yes.
Was he a priest in Satan?
No.
Okay,
so he was a regular. Right.
So he was like
military,
a Catholic priest.
It was Episcopal.
Okay, and
you know,
a Satanist.
Very
practicing
much so.
Okay, that's intriguing.
You know, the bondage. You know, the gay
the
thing,
wolf in the sheep's clothing. Okay.
And so, so I met this guy. I met him at a diner in Seattle. You know, 24-hour diner, or whatever. Started talking to him and didn't really know who he was at the particular time. But my friend, we were out there because this is when, you know, we're running around, we're hustling, we're bouncing around in different areas and stuff, and you know, it'd be, you know, University District and Broadway and downtown. It was that kind of the movement, the area, circle, whatever. The
hub.
Yeah. Okay. You know, it's where all the excitement was and people and everything else and stuff's going on, and then my friend had entered. We were looking for some speed, and he says he knows where to get it. And then he says, and later I found out that he got a quarter for introducing me to the guys. It was kind of set up, but I was formally introduced to Tom.
Okay.
Tom, I'll just call him Tom. And okay, so first night, get introduced up in the room, up in his place, and I'm 15. And I was dabbling. Everybody called themselves a Satanist. You know, none of us did any rituals or anything like that. But it was the cool thing to friggin' exactly right. You know, and so I was claiming that and everything else. And he asked me about it and all that. And okay, so shot up. I remember he had a Kiss album there, Creatures of the Night, playing that. He had a Motorhead album. Pretty cool apartment. You know, it was just us. You know, he seemed very cool. You know, he was probably 50 or so at the time. And got the needles. And I was going by Demon, right? And my name or whatever. And shot up, and he told me, he said in that night, in that instant, you know, within that framework, that I would be a slave to Satan, that I would be an addict, that I would be, slave to lust. I mean, all this shit, right? And I was just like, okay, cool, man. I'm high.
Yeah.
Excellent speed, quality speed. And I remember also we got in bed, and it was a fantasy thing, right? It wasn't even anything doing. I remember seeing him showing me a picture of a dude, and his wanker was a snake, but it was an evil image is what it was. Now, the interesting thing that I remember very, very vividly was going into this fantasy trip and talking about all this shit, right? We're just talking about all this stuff, and I mean, things that I've never, ever talked about. I mean, but it was just, I think I was corrupt enough at that point, where, the speed just brought it out. And now speed is one of those things that it destroys inhibitions. It's the sex drug. It's it's why it's so much of a big deal in certain circles and stuff like that, and everything else. And you're up for a long time. I mean, all that, right?
Yeah.
And it really is Satan's drug, man, hands down. And that's what he was calling it. This is Satan's candy, Okay. And so the thing with me being an addict and a slave to lust and a slave to Satan and all this other stuff was in this role of,
he was reaffirming what you wanted.
This, and he wasn't saying it as a warning. It was an
affirmation.
You are, and I was all for it. All for it. Now, we're in bed and we're talking, and I just remember, and this happened a lot, was the talking. I'm gonna have to use the restroom here in a second. Was the talking, and just over and over. Now, he would repetitively say shit constantly. It was just the repetitive things of what he would say all the time, he's whacking off and saying this shit, and so but anyways, that particular night, I swear to God, I know it was the drug and the speed, but see, I also know that there are real forces out there.
Oh yeah,
There's forces. There's good and bad, and there's forces.
Yep.
And so, we were definitely involved in those forces, those dark forces. And so, I remember, but of course, I can't sit there and tell you that it actually happened. It was in my head, it's drugs and all that shit. But the bottom line is, I'm also saying that there's forces.
Yeah.
So no matter what, you open doors. It did happen in my mind for sure.
Yeah.
But you open doors and they're there.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing that is that I'm trying to convey is that went through this whole fantasy trip, man, and I remember this lady being involved, and and the sex and all this stuff that was going on, and it was really, really weird because when I came out of what. And when you're high, there's a point where you're high and you're really tweaking everything, and then you kind of like snap back to reality a little bit. You're still tweaking, but it's like it kind of shifts gears a little bit, But anyways, I remember this lady, and she was involved. We were involved in it, and we were doing all this stuff and everything, and then I was just convinced that it really happened, and she was really there, and that it was all real.
Yeah.
And so I never had that experience again. On that level, right? With
Are you talking like a succubus?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But it was that first night is what I'm saying. It was the first night I was introduced to him, and he'd said this stuff. We got high, and it was several days of being high. Now, because I was so willing and everything else, and I guess I was the right type of person for him and everything else. I was the guy that was now with him, right? And
you were his guy.
Absolutely. Moved in with them. Still run around and hang out with my friends and things like that. But now I had access to all the drugs, all the speed I wanted. And when you're young and in that situation, it's a very permissive lifestyle that everything was allowed. Yeah. And so
the gluttony.
Well, it's all that.
Yeah.
It's all that, And so, I was in a position that a lot of people wanted to be in, put it that way. And were shot down and rejected and this, that, and the other. And, but while I was there, involved in this, it was all just, it was sex magic. It was sex, ritual. Everything was demonic, and it was evil, and it was the repetitive nature of the things that were talked about.
Wow.
That's the one thing. I won't go into the details, but the one thing that, when I have talked about it and that I remember, it was just this repetitive thing. And so, yeah, I mean, there's going through the rest of the year, and in '86, and I ended up getting in some trouble. I was kind of back with mom, but I wasn't back with her. But I got in some trouble that sent me to Nacelle.
Yep.
But within this year and being with him, I did a lot of drugs, and was involved in just massive debauchery with this. Now, this took things to a different level, because when you open those doors, dark doors, there ain't no damn limit. Now, I'm not saying I went out and did anything, hurt anybody or anything like that, but when you involved that type of stuff and porn and everything else, it's everything's degraded.
Yeah.
And so,
like, you could have gone out and it wouldn't have bothered you.
Well, no, I won't say that.
Oh,
there was
okay.
a limit with me where I could never do certain things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wouldn't think about doing certain things. Couldn't hurt anybody. It was never about hurting things
okay,
or whatever.
gotcha.
I'm just saying that
This was just self-indulgence for you.
Self-indulgence, to a corrupt level of where I was able to get corrupted to. Now, there's levels and levels and levels of a person's ability to get corrupted. The issue is, I think, with a lot of this stuff and what's going on in society is that when you remove certain doors and roadblocks and things that are supposed to be there, and now, Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt, should be the whole law. This was a corrupt individual. He was insane by his own recollection.
Yep.
He was not a good individual. He was a drug addict. He was a tormented individual.
Yeah.
Now, to hold these types of people up, this is where this stuff takes you. It always has a price. And even a lot of these occultic dudes that are real serious occultists will tell you there is a price. There is a price. Don't you ever think you're getting away with anything, because you're not.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to go and do something or whatever, and there's not going to be something coming back on you, you're a fool.
Yeah.
But people get sucked into different things, and you don't even have to be involved in the occult. We're introduced to the occult every single day through our culture, and stuff. But what I'm saying is, as far as specifically, is when you remove things that are there to keep us,
like safeguards
that are there. And this is what societies and cultures have. Certain things are off limits. They're off limits, and when there's a strict punishment and when there's a strict code that keeps those things enforced and in line, the only way you're getting away with it is if it's tucked away in your head. But not everybody thinks along those lines, and so, so when we lose those safeguards, and then now things start becoming more and more permissible, you can't tell me that you can't look around in society right now and see that we're at a place right now with what they're pushing that is insane. Oh, yeah. Okay, so where does it stop?
Yeah.
Now, these people will say, well, yeah, we just want to do this and it's going to stop here. No, it ain't.
Yeah.
No, it ain't. It's not going to stop.
Correct.
And it just keeps getting more and more degraded and more lower. You remove those boundaries and stuff. And so, me, I'm a 15-year-old kid that had been introduced to things and certain things. So I was more able to kind of go along with certain stuff. Getting involved with that, where you are tying in the satanic element, and this would be called vulgar Satanists. You know what I'm saying? It's, other people that are, like I said, there's levels and stuff. But that just took it up to another notch. Now, it caused a lot of damage because, again, I opened a lot of doors, I think. When you're saying that I want to be a drug addict, I want to be a slave to Satan and a slave to lust, and and this and that and the other and all this other crap, and you're doing drugs and you're believing this shit.
You're manifesting it,
all
essentially.
that, and way down the line, as far as me, get to this maybe at other podcasts or whatever, but
wherever you want to stop, you can wherever.
Jumping ahead, I was in San Francisco in probably 90, 91, and I was cranked out, spun out. I was a drug addict, living, two different lives, and, friends and, and things like that, because this is the world that I had trapped myself in, and I hated it. I despised it. I did things, but that wasn't me.
Yeah.
I wanted so bad to be,
So that being said, everything that you told me, and I've known some of it, not all of it, but you were never that person to your family.
No.
You were always loving, caring, empathetic, all that shit.
Yeah.
So I just want people to know that you were able to play your roles.
Yeah.
So
and it was a role.
Yeah.
You know, and I was always able, when I went home, you know, I was home. That world was a world that I stepped into.
Yep.
And it was a world that was left when I wasn't in it.
Yeah.
You know, but it was a very out of control world.
Yeah.
You know, to say the least. But when I was in San Francisco, you know, and that's a whole nother story of bottoming out. You know, I knew that I knew that Satan had it in for me. You know, I knew I was being destroyed. You know, there's a couple incidences that I'll get into at some point.
Yeah.
But where we ran into that individual, you know, and stuff like that, and I think that he was trying to get me to hurt myself. You know, I won't go into details right now, but. You know, I mean, there's stuff.
Yeah.
There's stuff that goes with that lifestyle. But my point in that particular time is I remember being on paranoid, strung out, trying to get away from the city, not knowing how to get away from there. I just felt trapped. I didn't know what to do. And I remember just praying to God, man, you know, please get me away from the city, get me off of drugs. I don't care if I have to spend the rest of my life in prison. I can't do this. I don't want to do this, you know, and I was so desperate. And I was able to get away from San Francisco, and I was able to get off drugs and get things cleaned up when I turned 20. But it was a nightmare. It was an effing nightmare. And so my reason for this, and I've thought about it a lot, you know, over the years and everything. There's a lot of stuff. This is just kind of things about my life, but there's a lot of things that I've thought about because growing up, one of the things that, you know, especially when I started to read, you know, I started to read the Bible, I started to read a lot of things, right? And then, you know, a lot of the question that I had, especially for years and years, is why did I turn out the way that I did? Why did my life turn out the way that it did? You know, why couldn't I have went into the military when I wanted to go into the military and had a normal freaking life, you know? And then, of course, so, you know, reading and everything else. I mean, and then I started, you know, doing the research into the Frankfurt School and, you know, all this stuff, you know, and then understanding that there are forces that are out there that are by design wanting to corrupt people and wanting to corrupt society, you know. And so am I responsible for what I do? Absolutely. But when you're a kid and you're young, and this is the thing that everybody, they have to understand. People will acknowledge it intellectually, but I don't know how much people really give it a lot of thought. That the influences that people are under and are subjected to in a day-to-day basis, especially their kids, affects them and affects the decisions they make, and it affects how they see themselves and what they do. Yeah. And we're a society that literally, we're so guided by images and by Hollywood and by music and by everything thrown at us. You ask a teenage kid any question, and I'm going to guarantee you that kid's going to give you whatever the narrative that's going on out there. They're going to be buying into it full on. Yeah. And maybe the narrative's correct. Maybe it's right. But how much thought and research are they actually putting into it to figure things out? And we don't. We're just being led by the nose to accept whatever's out there where somebody wants to take us for their reasons. And these very same forces are what is allowing the corruption and the drugs and everything else to be going on.
Especially with the impressionable young minds.
And that's it. Yeah. You know, and it, you know, for some kids, and a lot of kids, they make it through and they're fine. And you know, I mean, all that stuff, you know, for some people they're not. And there's a lot of victims out there right now. Yeah. You know, they talk about trafficking and all this stuff. And I don't think I think it's, you don't hear enough about it. Yeah. And then of course, when you do hear stuff like with the Maxwell thing, Ghislaine Maxwell and all this other stuff, the people that are so high and that are involved in this stuff, man, they're not being held accountable. No. You know, you hear about this little friggin', you know, perv that gets busted doing whatever, and you know, and the world comes down, and, you know, and rightly so. But he's one little person that, and his life has been
he's a scapegoat.
Affected by the crap that's out there that he's allowed to get in, that's come out in this terrible way, and but meanwhile, all this stuff is allowed to happen, and the people that are pushing shit. They don't get held
their
accountable.
agenda. And the interesting thing that you just brought up with the guys, what's her name? Maxwell? Gazelle. So they didn't show any of that shit. They didn't show any of it at all, but they gave us Johnny Depp and his wife.
Oh, of course.
Fuck, what kind of trade-off is that shit? I don't give a fuck about that.
There is no trade-off.
But that's what they wanted to feed the minds of the people that just wanted just the fantasy thing, but they didn't focus on the shit that really affects people. They gave us this Hollywood bullshit.
And-
So give me some closing thoughts.
All right, so-
because
sorry.
this is chapter 2 of your life. I'm considering this. You made it through one chapter, maybe 2 chapters. We got a lot of fucking chapters to go through in upcoming podcasts. So I want to end it at a spot that's comfortable for you, where it's a good closing spot, because there's so much fucking more that I want to hear.
Yeah. So, we all have our stories, they're all important, every single one of them. I don't say any of this to draw any, kind of attention towards me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anybody thinking, oh, poor him, whatever, or the opposite.
Yeah.
I going through stuff, in life, there's a reason people have homes and they have guardians, and there's barriers, and there's protecting things and hedges around families and stuff. Because when you are allowed to step out into another world, you don't know what's out there waiting for you, and a lot of people are finding that out in real bad ways. I was lucky because, one, it was over 30 years ago, and as bad as things, could have been. And it's amazing when I sit back and I think about stuff. I would wander around and, get picked up and hang out and put myself in these situations and things like that. And nothing super, super terrible
You're
happened.
still alive.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm alive. I wasn't picked up and tortured. I mean, there's a lot of things that could have happened, and it didn't happen. And for me, where I'm at right now, I got a wife, I got my family, we have a family relationship, my dad's back in the picture with my mom. Things aren't perfect. Nothing's perfect, but this is the life that we have, and we make the best of it. Mm-hmm. I've got work, from where I put myself and the road that I went down, because I was seeking after something to look up to and something to identify with, and to belong to. Those things are supposed to be provided in the home, and with the right role models. And it starts with your mom and your dad will always, for all those, man haters and father haters out there, the man will always be the person that is put up as the standard of manhood, of masculinity, of strength, of protection.
Yep.
And so the role that men have in doing that, Adam's sin was not that he wasn't there for Adam, because he had to be out there tending the garden and working and everything else, and she had her work as well. Eve failed because she listened to what the serpent had to say in the first place, was to question what she knew was right, was to question what God said, which was for her good. She listened. Adam, man, is that he listens and gives way to his wife or women, without standing and doing what it is that they're supposed to do, because without men, they're there's nobody to stand. Men
right there
are
with you.
When it comes to the protection and everything else, all that, they're what enables women and children to thrive at the best and safest of their ability, so that they can do those things. And all these erosions that are happening in society, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. Somebody will always be filling that gap. You will not replace this with nothing. You will replace this with something else. And so looking back on my life and everything else, I know as a youth, what I experienced, what I was needing from myself that my mother couldn't provide, all the love that she gave me, she was my mother. Yeah. She was the tender, warm person that I can go to and get comfort and love from. But the person that I looked up to as the thing that I wanted to aspire to, had taken me off track.
Yeah.
Not that his intent was to be that way, but that is what happened.
Yeah.
And it was filled in by all this other crap that's out there. So, as far as the closing thing goes, where I went down and what I was allowed to go through and what I chose to go through had consequences, but this is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I know I believe in a God, and I absolutely 100% believe in God. And by that I mean Jesus Christ, the Christian God.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind, and I know that people would say this is subjective or whatever, and that's fine. That I was able to get through my life. I was my own worst enemy. I was so self-destructive. I was so self-destructive, and here I am. And God does restore. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think that you know, in the overall picture, everybody has their belief and everything else, but we will continue to suffer and to deal with stuff because we are following the wrong leaders, you know, and this happens over and over again in history, but we're following the wrong leaders. We need to get back to what people know is the right way and the right course. Otherwise we are going to crash and burn, you know, and there's a whole lot of victims out there, and there's a whole lot of, you know, gazelles out there and Jeffrey Epstein's that are getting away with a whole lot of stuff, and it's just going to become more of the same because there's nothing. We don't have anybody protecting anybody. You know, the powers that be look who they're protecting. Look who they're calling the enemy and the bad guy. You know, we got drugs and massive crime and all this stuff going on, and where's our protection? They're not going to protect us. You know, so it is the males that can pull their heads out of their butt and realize, man, that they have a responsibility to quit getting beat down by what society tells them that they're supposed to be. You know, they're supposed to be men and good men. Good men. Good men. And that's where it's at for me right now. So
I love you, bro.
I love you too,
I'm
bro.
proud of you.
Thanks.